Hey gorgeous souls, I hope you're having a great afternoon. It is rainy and drizzly here, but that is okay. I wanted to talk about a mechanism that can really shut down our ability to be able to think clearly. This massively impacts our self-esteem, self-confidence, self-belief, often can have us paralyzed in inaction, and creates a lot of doubt, fear, and confusion, and often can be the source of huge anxiety in our system as well. And I think it's something that people aren't necessarily consciously aware of. I know with all of the work that I've done over the years, certainly really starting to understand this more and more within myself, but it has taken me years to actually really identify and understand the shame persona or the shame mechanism that can sometimes show up when shame is triggered in our system. Now, sometimes this can come from childhood experiences, or if a parent has felt a particular sense of shame in their own system, or been shamed as a parent, as a child when they were children, they often can unconsciously or consciously project that shame onto us as kids. But also anything where you feel that you are not enough in a particular area, or there's been a real sense of failure. Sometimes we can attach a lot of shameful feelings that can get re-triggered again when somebody either mentions something or when the topic comes up. So some areas that may be relevant for you, when I'm going to speak through and talk through literally the mechanism of shame and the shame persona that can take over, because often it feels like, God, like this is not who I am, or it's all, we can be heavily associated with it or heavily identified with it, particularly if we've felt that particular emotion a lot in our life. So that can be really, really challenging. So I'll read through some of those traits. A lot of people that I've shared this with have really, it seems to be a universal thing. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, all those things. That's exactly how I feel. So it is a real kind of, I call it the shame persona of how that kind of steps in. But then what needs to happen or occur in order for you to overcome that, or to be able to shift that as well for yourself. Because along with this sense that comes up, and like I said, lots of different things can trigger this. For me, it can be like around sensitivity. So if I'm feeling I'm too sensitive or I'm too emotional, sometimes that can be a bit of a shame trigger for me. Or interestingly, for some of you, you might be like, what? It's also triggered around like feeling like I'm not loving enough. And which is kind of crazy. Like I had, somebody that knows me very, very well, and they were just absolutely gobsmacked that I would have that feeling or be triggered by that particular thing. Some people, it can be around money and how well you feel like you handle money. But if there's anything where you feel like I'm hopeless or I'm bad or I can't do it, sometimes it can be looking at financial figures even, where there's a cloudiness that comes over and you lose your ability to be able to think properly. Sometimes this can come up in a relationship where you're communicating with somebody, something gets said and instantly it feels like the body shuts down, you become cloudy, you can't articulate your words, you can't communicate correctly, or when I say correctly, just you're unable to communicate in a way that's really effective. And there can be hypersensitivity that actually takes place in that situation, where then we feel personally attacked, or we feel like whatever's going on is very, very difficult for us. So I'm just going to read through some of these things as well. Often it can be a feeling really sorry for yourself. It can be feeling sad and disconnected from the world. It can be feeling unlovable and unworthy. That's fabulous. Thanks so much, Liz. Great to have you on here, darling. It can feel that we don't deserve anything. So this can go back to our deservingness or our feelings of worthiness. Shame and worthiness. Shame is actually way under, but guilt and worthiness are around the same level on the emotional guidance scale in terms of the same vibration. I really do feel that shame is the most difficult experience that we have as human beings in terms of emotions, and shame is often at the deep root cause of suicide, and it's why I really think it's really important to understand these things, because when we are deep in shame and we don't know what's going on, often we can believe these things and believe what the persona is kind of telling us in that moment, which is very painful. but long term, it creates burnout, it creates absolute exhaustion, and it is very difficult to maintain good relationships when shame keeps getting re-triggered. And particularly if you've got two people in a relationship where there's shame playing out, both can re-trigger each other's shame, and often that is the case when we attract equal and opposite woundings in a partnership or in people around us. So there can often be that feeling that, like I mentioned, that we don't deserve anything. We often retract from the world and don't want to see anyone. So we want to shut down, we want to isolate, feel guilt and shame. And often I get like a cloudiness in my head when I've spoken that with other people. They've recognized that as well. There can be confusion and doubt in who you are. It's like you really doubt who you are. You feel confused. You don't feel clear. You don't feel like, oh yeah, like that's who I am. Yep, this is what I'm here to do. Totally like lose purpose, lose function. We become confused between our own and other people's feelings, can end up feeling responsible for other people's feelings, believing that it's all your own fault, or I'm responsible, I made them feel that way, or I made them feel bad, or it was something that I did. Very low energy, physical energy, as well as obviously emotional energy. We can become very, very embarrassed about ourselves or our body. So body image can sometimes be something that we experience a high level of shame about. We can feel depression and lethargy, so exhaustion again can come up. We can become very defensive, very poor me, or very like a lot of self-pity kind of playing out, end up wallowing in emotions. And again, all this, I'm saying absolutely no judgment. I have felt all of the above and experienced all of the above and been triggered into shame multiple times through multiple different experiences. So it's just really having love and compassion. If any of this is relatable for you, we contract, we shut down, we withdraw, like I mentioned, a loss of passion or joy or excitement. We can feel trapped or powerless. We can often feel that we don't know how to change the particular situation. So we become so confused and so anxious that we negatively loop in a cycle of overthinking and overanalyzing, which again just reinforces that persona at a deeper level. Stomach issues, gynecological issues for women, all of these things can play out because it really impacts those lower three chakras as well, in survival, fitting in, belonging, in power, in relationships, as well as our own personal will or I am statements. We can become easily embarrassed and humiliated, hypersensitive with others' energy. So even a tiny little look, or somebody's in a bad mood, we're like, oh my gosh, it was my fault, I must have made them feel bad. Just taking that on or assuming that without actually checking in, believing that we hurt or disappoint others, reactive, defensive in conversations, trying to justify or prove to others that it's not our fault, because like underlying there is that belief that it is our fault, and needing to be right. So it's kind of like when we're trying to really prove a point, or it's very difficult to hear somebody else's opinion, often it's because shame has been triggered. Total loss of confidence and clarity in who we are. Often don't sleep well, can run an anxiety pattern. I know for myself, I used to wake between 1 and 3 a.m. when I was running that anxiety pattern, spending a lot of time trying to fix ourselves. Oh my gosh, I'm just broken, or there's something wrong with me, I'm not enough, I've got to fix myself, I've got to change this all about myself, I'm wrong. It's like not accepting of ourselves and who we are. We can become passive aggressive in our communication. So often if we're in shame, we feel that we can't get our needs met, or nobody's going to listen to our own needs. So often we react passively aggressively. Yes, it's totally fine, that's okay. Underneath you're seething, or you're really, really angry, or really, really resentful. So again, these things can play out quite subtly in our lives without actually having an awareness around it. Sometimes we can find it very difficult to ask for help, accept help, or communicate our needs effectively. So it's like, hey, it would be so wonderful, would you be able to help me out with this? If we're in shame, it would be we feel wrong, or we feel bad, or we feel like we're imposing on somebody without actually just genuinely and compassionately asking for assistance or help. We can often feel that we've lost our voice, so other people don't hear us. We see ourselves through, and this is an important one to recognize, we see ourselves through other people's eyes. So it's actually our own projection, but we imagine that they are thinking this about us, or believing this about us. So, and if they have a particular emotional experience, again, we believe it's all about ourselves, that I've done something wrong, or I've acted in a way, or I've let them down, or I've hurt them, or I've disappointed them. Like, there's a lot of internal focus, but we don't see ourselves through our self-love or higher self, or even through our own eyes. We imagine that this person is thinking this particular way about us. We project onto others. So when we feel shame, that's when we often blame others. Well, you made me feel, you did this to me, you blah, blah, blah. Or we can blame ourselves. I'm wrong, I'm bad, I didn't do this right, like all of those things. Quickest way out of shame unconsciously is to blame somebody else. It's a really key thing that can show up, and it's really important, again, in relationships, to really be able to identify that, to understand that, to recognize when we do that, hey, what's going on for me? Where am I at? What's actually happening? What do I need to heal? And turning that back around, where instead of blaming somebody else, well, you made me feel, hang on a second, I made me feel, because I'm feeling low self-worth or whatever's going on. Often we live in the past, in the shame mechanism, and also fear and dread the future. So sometimes there can be that sick feeling about the future, extreme anxiety, and certainly feeling paralyzed when we're trying to express ourselves as well. And yeah, the projection can be a big one too, Liz, as I'm sure you and I are both aware of. That can definitely happen. And like I said, often we're unconsciously in shame or in the experience of shame and don't actually really realize it. But when there's defensiveness that comes up, when there's high judgment that comes up, often it's because we're in our own shame. And it's really addressing that and taking love and, looking at those things with absolute self-love and self-compassion, as to what's actually really going on here and what is the deeper belief around this. And if that's something that you're experiencing, it's definitely important to reach out to somebody that you love, trust, or feel really comfortable in working with, in order to heal these things, because often these shame triggers can come up again and again and again, until they are actually dealt with and looked at in a really resourceful way. And often it can relate to, like I mentioned, our childhood experiences, and what has originally been projected onto us. And remembering, the second generation, like back, they lived in World War. There was what's transpired over the last 100 years generationally has been absolutely mammoth. And so a lot of those authoritarian type parenting styles were very shaming, about all about, it's not about the behavior, but it's about oh, you're a bad or you're a naughty child. Or shame, the difference between shame and guilt is shame is you are bad, you are wrong. It's attached to the identity or to the core person, whereas the belief of, or the guilt is more about, you did wrong, you made a mistake. So whereas shame is more, you are a mistake. And again, I say those words cautiously, hoping I'm not triggering shame in your system. But if you are experiencing shame, or you identify with some of those things, please, like I mentioned, reach out. Shame is one of the biggest causes, like I mentioned, of suicide, because it is essentially at a core level believing that we are so bad that we do not believe that we're worthy of existing, or believe that our existence is not important here, or we feel so worthless in ourselves when that shame is triggered. And I've certainly experienced some of those feelings myself. I haven't acted on those, but it feels so painful sometimes when we're sitting in those experiences and recognize those things. And particularly when you don't know how to question your beliefs, or you don't know how to question your thoughts, it can produce a lot of low self-esteem in our system. And I'm recognizing, there's a lot of kids, even that, have been brought up in certainly loving situations, loving circumstances, that still have this shame mechanism play out. It is fortunately, I don't know which way to look at it, but it is a human experience that we have, and it's when we're very, very disconnected from our own self-love, and learning how to love yourself is the most important thing moving forward. plus overcoming symptoms or circumstances of burnout where your energy has been so low for such a long time. Perhaps, you know, you've gone into adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion, and when we've attached our value to being productive or to getting things done or to taking care of everybody else, sometimes some of these things can really perpetuate the experience. And if that is you, please reach out, send me a PM, because it's exactly what my program deals with and helps to heal all these ways that sometimes we have the experience of shame. The program is not designed specifically to heal shame, but it's specifically designed to heal burnout, which covers these experiences that we have as human beings. And also really is about diving deeper to emotional awareness to be able to reframe and change situations, to be able to live a life that feels amazing, fulfilling, joyous, and to really create a life that you love, but most importantly, love you again. I think that is, you know, I know for me personally, when I'm loving me, you know, life is pretty sweet, life is pretty grand, and things happen in such a beautiful, aligned way for me when I am, you know, truly loving me and connected with my higher self in that moment as well. So lots of love to you all. Like I mentioned, if this resonates for you, or if you have somebody in your life that you know that this may resonate with, please like, love, or share it. It's so important when people really understand the mechanism of shame and the persona that takes over. And when we're in that cloud, it can feel very difficult to shift. And having the awareness of, oh, this is shame, this is what's going on, and then being able to know how to toggle out of that. When I say toggle out of that, know how to step out of that quite quickly and effectively. Now you've got the power back in your own hands. Now you can make new choices and heal those aspects of self that have been traumatized with shame. So sending you all love. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much, Jode. That is beautiful. And yes, I like my new top too. Do everything with passion, or do all things with passion. Absolutely. Thank you so much, darling. Have an amazing day. Lots of love. And thanks so much for watching too, Liz. Bye, doll.